Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips.
Hello listeners, and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
Hello everyone.
And if you're a new listener to Unlocking Your Truth, I'll explain a little bit about the show. We're here every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 Pacific Standard Time, broadcasting live on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley, on the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. And Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show, and we focus on everything to do with metaphysics and spirituality. And so every week we like to educate you about a different topic under that general umbrella. And last week on the show, we talked about psychic abilities, and specifically,
We sure did.
Yeah, we did. And specifically, we talked about your psychic ability blueprint. And we got about halfway through a big information download all about that. And so we thought we'd continue on this week with part 2 of your psychic ability blueprint. So that is what we're going to be talking about this evening. And for those of you who are listening to the radio show, then it's possible for you to call into the show, listeners. And the number to call in the studio is 604 504 7441, extension 4142. That's 604 504 7441, extension 4142. So bear that in mind, because as we go through the show, we open up the phone lines for you, the listeners, to call in and join in the discussion or even ask us some questions. And we actually also have a Facebook group that we live stream the radio show onto, and that is the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group. So if you want to see us while we're doing the show, please join that Facebook group. So as I was explaining, tonight's show is about psychic abilities, and I wonder, listeners, how many psychic abilities do you think there are?
227.
And how many psychic abilities do you think you have?
226?
Yeah. So actually, there are 22 different psychic abilities. And we talked about this last week. You know, most people think about, well, okay, there's my third eye, and I'm psychic through my third eye. But in actual fact, every single chakra is a window of perception for the soul, is a channel for spiritual communication. And depending on the chakra, it's sort of like that window of perception is focusing on a different aspect of your reality. And so last week we talked about the lower 4 chakras, the first, second, third, and fourth chakra. And those are the energy centers that are relating more to denser energy bandwidths. So, for example, the first chakra relates to survival in the physical world, and it contains information on survival instinct, how to survive in a physical body, how to heal a physical body, how to manifest what you want all the way down to the physical level. The second chakra contains information about, whereas the first one is relating to the planet and interacting with the planetary environment, the second chakra is relating to interacting with other people. So it's the emotional one, it's the sexual one, and the psychic ability that is channeled through the second chakra is clairsentience or clear feeling. And often people, when they talk about being an empath or being empathic, they're talking about facing some of the challenges that one faces when one's going through a second chakra opening and when one's clairsentience is being mastered. And so, and then the third chakra that we talked about last week, that has to do with earth plane reality and astral plane reality. So it relates to energy distribution, so where you're focusing your life force energy, what you are channeling it into, what choices you're making, and so on, and also what you're doing in your out-of-body experience, and how much of your out-of-body experience you're bringing back into the physical world. And then, of course, the heart chakra is the one that is the juncture point between the lower and upper worlds, and that one relates to affinity and oneness. So all those feelings that you get in your heart when you feel drawn towards something, that's giving you information about what you love, or and what your place is in the world, where you fit into the world. So all of that was covered on last week's show, and so we kind of left at a point where we were ready to talk about the 5th chakra, the 6th chakra, and the crown chakra. And so now we're getting into more of the multidimensional cosmic level of consciousness once we start moving into the upper chakras.
That sounds eerie.
Does it?
Ethereal.
Multi-dimensional. And so let's start, because we were working our way up, let's talk about the 5th chakra. And the 5th chakra it's really it's the spiritual chatterbox. There's a massive amount of communication that goes through the 5th chakra, a massive amount of information. It's like an information superhighway with multiple channels going back and forth through that 5th chakra. And so that energy center, as well as governing your physical communication, it also relates to spiritual communication. And there are actually 5 different psychic abilities that we can talk about when we're talking about the 5th chakra. One of them is the inner voice. And what is the inner voice? The inner voice is the voice of your higher self communicating with you, the body personality self, the temporal self, the version of you that's here on planet Earth. And so that is a voice that sounds like you, that you can always trust, and is always going to give you excellent guidance if you listen. So it's never going to criticize you or judge you. It's always going to support you and validate you. So there's some clues of how to recognize the inner voice, because if it's judging you, that's not your inner voice. It's your inner critic or your outer judge or some other aspect of the ego consciousness. In addition to the inner voice, we also have clairaudience, clear hearing. And that is the psychic ability to be able to tune into vibrational frequencies in an auditory kind of a way. And so some examples of that are being able to hear the music of the spheres. The music of the spheres is the vibrations and resonances and patterns of energy in the angelic realm. And so it's possible through the clairaudience to hear otherworldly music, totally out of this world, really, really beautiful harmonies that are healing and that are comforting and that just make you feel uplifted.
That reminds me of the guy on the street that we see once in a while dancing. There's a fellow on our street that dances, instead of running or jogging, he dance-a-thons through the street, listening to his own music.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, and I think he is listening to some kind of voices.
Yeah, I think so too.
And the other part of clairaudience is being able to hear spirit voices. And so anything from, if you were doing mediumship and you could hear the voice of a deceased loved one communicating to you verbally through something that sounds like a voice, even though there was no physical voice there, that's clairaudience. Or if you hear your spirit guide talk to you in a language, in a kind of an auditory way, and yet there's no physical thing that's speaking, that's clairaudience. And clairaudience doesn't only have to relate to someone who is in the non-corporeal ethereal form communicating with you. It can also be something where you can communicate and listen to other people, in fact, through your clairaudience. So you could be listening to a friend through your clairaudience, for example. And then we're still talking about the fifth chakra here, folks. So you've got listening to my own inner voice, listening to other voices in a spiritual way. But then we also have telepathy and telepathic communication. So the first two that I talked about, they are more like a verbal form. There's language. You're recognizing language, and when you hear those two. The telepathic communication is non-verbal. So it is energy resonances and information transmitted in a vibrational sense. And so an example I always like to use is, because people are transmitting telepathically all the time. You know, really good teachers are transmitting telepathically while they are speaking. And they're communicating in this non-verbal, non-physical way.
Adam wants to know, sorry to interrupt you, but are you speaking of an auditory hearing, like normal hearing, or?
So Corey said, am I speaking of an auditory hearing like normal hearing? And the answer to that is not like normal hearing. Okay, so it might be similar, but it's not. I'm trying to think of an analogy. If you think about if you think about seeing a spirit, let's say you see an aura, you're not seeing it with your physical eyes, you're seeing it with your third eye. It's the same thing. You're not hearing it with your physical ears, you're hearing it in a subtle way. So it's discernible as something verbal and a sound, but it's not actually there like my voice is there now. It's more inner. It's more like an inner voice, an inside voice, than an outside voice hitting the eardrum.
Is it different though than so basically sometimes you have three voices in your head. You have your egoic voice, your spiritual voice, and this voice?
Well, depending on who you are, you could have any number of voices in your head. But I mean, I'll answer the question in a slightly different way than you asked it, and that is to say, people often have issues or problems discerning what voice am I listening to, and is this my inner voice, my higher self talking to me through my inner voice, or is this somebody else? And if it's somebody else, is it a spirit guide? Is it some beneficial or non-beneficial being, or is it my ego, or is it my mind and the thoughts in my mind? And so part of the development and the seniority in the fifth chakra is to be able to discern the difference between those different voices.
That would help.
Yes, yeah, very much so. All right, so we talked about inner voice and we talked about clairaudience, and now we were going on to talk about telepathy. And I was going to give you an example of telepathy. So let's say you've got a new outfit and you're asking your friend, what do you think of my new outfit? And your friend says, oh, I really like that. Oh, that suits you. It looks really, really great. So the friend might say that verbally. But if the friend is actually lying and not being authentic with what they really feel, there may very well be an emanation of what they're really, really considering about this outfit that's being broadcast telepathically. And so you will have a feeling that they're lying to me, because in your telepathic channels, you are receiving that non-verbal communication that's saying, oh my God, that is such an ugly outfit. And so it often makes us paranoid as this is opening up, because quite often in our world, there's a surface level of reality, and then there's an underlying thing that's going on beneath the surface level of reality. So there's a kind of duplicity going on. And in a world of awakened consciousness and awakened humans, we would have to be... there would be no lies, because we would all have our truth on the surface. If we had all of our psychic abilities open and picking up this, it would be. Looks like Corey's got a question.
No, I'm just as soon as you get a breath.
Yeah, sure.
Natasha here says that I have clairaudience as well. A ghost.
Can you speak into the microphone?
I am speaking into the microphone.
No, you weren't. It's not being picked up.
Okay, so hang on a second. So Natasha says, I have clairaudience as well. A ghost tried to talk to me once, and it sounded like snow on a TV.
You know what, Natasha? That's a really, really great experience to share with us, because because it gives us a little bit of information about what does it feel like when your clairaudience is opening up. And oftentimes it can be like you described, or something almost like, a lot of people get clicking noises in their ear, or sounds that sound like Morse code, or just like a signal tuning in and out. And they'll often think, well, I've got tinnitus here, and I need to go to the doctor and get this sorted out. But in my experience, it's not necessarily tinnitus, that it actually can be the experience of, as the clairaudience is beginning to open and you are beginning to have tuning into those higher frequency communications. So Natasha, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, also Jess says she's loving your course.
Oh, Jess, thank you so much. I'm really glad. I've forgotten what course you're doing, actually, Jess. I think it's the clairvoyance one. Write in which one you're doing. I think it's the clairvoyance one. But I'm not altogether, can't quite remember. Or maybe it's the empath one, the clairsentience one.
Whichever, she's liking it.
Well, thank you. So talking about telepathy, there's actually two forms of telepathy. One is broadband telepathy, and the other is narrowband telepathy. And what is the difference? So narrowband telepathy is one-on-one telepathic communication, and broadband telepathy is one-to-many telepathic communication. So it'd be the difference between me just talking to Corey telepathically, or me standing on stage and talking to 100 people in the audience telepathically. That's the difference between the narrow and the broadband. Yeah, is there another question?
Yes. And I'm trying to get the mic in my computer set up properly so I can read the computer and speak on the mic at the same time. And this is from Adam. And Adam says, so often I pick up what folks are thinking, though they are not necessarily giving up that info or the details. And he wants to know, is that part of telepathy?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's exactly what I described. That's exactly what I described, isn't it? That oftentimes people don't say exactly what they mean. They don't say exactly what they are thinking and what's going on inside of them for various reasons. Maybe they're afraid of what might happen if they tell the truth. Maybe they feel like they need to please you or be nice to you for some reason. But exactly. Or even a situation at work, I can remember when I worked in the corporate world, I went through maybe like 3 different downsizings in my career in the corporate world. And there would always be this underlying frequency that this was going on, even if it wasn't necessarily explicitly being shared with everybody. And again, like I said, it can make for a very paranoid existence. And, as your psychic abilities are opening up and as your chakras are starting to be developed further, there are challenges that come along with the different psychic abilities.
Ow.
There are challenges that you can encounter along the way, and specific challenges that relate to the specific abilities and chakras as well. Well, now I've reached a point, unfortunately, where we have to go to a break. So we're going to continue talking about the 5th chakra and the psychic abilities that are channeled through the 5th chakra after we have finished the break. So I'm just going to put the break on now, and we'll be back with you shortly, listeners. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey. We're broadcasting on CIVL on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley, and we're live in the studio this evening talking about psychic abilities. And we were actually talking about the relationship between psychic abilities and the chakra system. Because not everybody knows that there are many different psychic abilities, and each chakra in its own right is like a window of perception that helps you tune into different aspects of reality and has a form of intuition associated with it. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we were talking about last week as well. And every single one of you has your own unique configuration in your chakra system, your own unique profile of psychic abilities, and they actually relate directly to your life purpose, and your personal journey through the chakra system is completely unique to you. And so there is no right way for it to happen. It's no right, like, first I open my first chakra, then my second, then my third. No, everyone is different. Everyone's having different life experiences. Everyone is a different, unique spark of God consciousness. And so you're doing it your own way. You're taking your own unique journey through all of these gifts and abilities and through the chakra system. And by the way, you should check out on the website, we do have a special reading that I do called the Psychic Ability Blueprint.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, where we go through a reading of all your chakras and the 22 different psychic abilities that are channeled through the chakras.
Yeah, but it's a lot more than just a reading.
Yep, it is. It relates to, we talk about your life purpose. We talk about your life journey from when you were born to now, and the different challenges that you've been experiencing associating with your spiritual awakening.
Basically, what Dr. Leslie does is rate your psychic abilities when you were born, then rate them today and the same abilities, and you can see whether you've increased, decreased, and where you are actually standing and the differences between now and then. And then you pick 3 of the abilities and work on them, Leslie?
No.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't use the word rate either, because it's not something that you couldn't compare your unique profile of psychic abilities to someone else's, because it's completely unique to you. We use a way of measuring the degree to which you are focusing on a particular ability and a particular chakra. And you could be focusing on it to express it, and you could be focusing on it to overcome challenges with it. And so there are different reasons. And so if you and your friend both had your psychic ability blueprint done, you wouldn't sit down and compare one with the other and rate it against each other, because it's not about that. When we're as spirit, we're all unique. So any level of competition or comparison makes absolutely zero sense because of that uniqueness. All right.
Lori had a question, but she's not typing it.
Okay, well, that's okay. I'm going to finish off the 5th chakra, because we had...
Okay. Otherwise, it's a 3-week series.
Yeah, otherwise it's a 3-week series. So we were just talking about the difference between broad and narrow band telepathy, weren't we? And then there's one further aspect to the 5th chakra, which is called pragmatic intuition. And that's like just a practical intuition. And just,
I got that.
Yeah. And just to give you a couple of examples of that, I remember once I went to, I think it was a passport office or some thing like bureaucratic thing like that. This is just an example. And I went with somebody else, and they were meant to wait for me outside the office. And when I came out, they weren't there. And so I walked out the building, turned around the corner, turned around the next corner, turned around the next corner, went into a store, and there they were. Never been in that area of the city before. They hadn't told me where they'd gone, but practically speaking, I was able to locate them. Or another example would be, it's a bright sunny day, you leave the house and you grab your raincoat or your umbrella, and it's like, makes no sense. But later on in the day, you're glad you did because it rains. It's this very practical form of intuition.
I keep losing my microphone here. Sorry, Dr. Leslie.
Yes.
This thing that's on the microphone is a pain in the butt.
Oh. Corey's microphone has now fallen off. All right. So let's move on to the sixth chakra now. And that's the one that I'm sure all of you associate very much with being psychic, because it's one of the two chakras we talk about the most when we are talking about psychic abilities. And the sixth chakra is often called the third eye or the brow chakra. And this is the energy center that relates to your clairvoyance, so that's clear seeing, and abstract intuition. So there's two psychic abilities here, and I'll go on to explain them in a moment, but I think that there's a question waiting.
There is, Dr. Leslie, and it's from Lori. Lori says, when I'm away from my place and distractions, I plan to focus on clearing stuff out of my space. However, I'm not sure where to start. Clear out my chakras or release in rows, and there's so much in that space that keeps coming up. Where to start?
So when you're feeling overwhelmed, Laurie, I would just keep it simple, really. And so instead of jumping around, oh, there's something here, and there's something here, and there's something here, and there's something here, is keep it simple, do your grounding, and do your roses. And of course, in answering this question, a lot of people won't understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about roses. But it's a technique that relates to releasing energy that is taught in my practical meditation course, and it's also taught in my Unlock Your Intuition course. And it's a technique that we use in exercising and practicing our clairvoyance as well. And so Laurie's taken some of that training, and that's why she's using that language. So yeah, she's referring to a technique of using your clairvoyance to see energy in your space and to release and let go of what isn't supporting you. And so I would just say, Laurie, is you don't even worry about what it is. Just focus on simple techniques and just clearing my space and clearing my space and clearing my space. And then you don't have to worry where to start. You just start and trust that it's all going through those two techniques. So I hope that helps you.
Here's what you got to hear this one. This is really good from Murray. Murray says, my 2-year-old always touches my eyes when I'm thinking about my birth mom and my nan, my mom. She was born after they passed, and eyes are a big part of their passing. Very interesting question. It's not really a question; it's a statement, I guess.
Yeah, that is.
What?
So she's saying her 2-year-old touches her eyes whenever she's thinking about her mum and grandma who died.
No, it's my 2-year-old always touches my eyes when I'm thinking about my birth mother and my nan, my mum. She says she was born after they passed, and their eyes are a big part of their passing.
Okay, so I think she's saying. I'm not exactly. I might need a bit more information to answer that, really. So feel free to type some more in there, and then after we've talked about the sixth chakra, we can look at that question.
Okay. No more questions till after the sixth chakra? Is that
no, type your questions, folks.
No, type them, but not tell you. Okay. I'll keep track.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about the sixth chakra, and we're talking about clairvoyance, and we're talking about abstract intuition and what they are. So clairvoyance is translated as clear seeing. It's the ability to see as spirit. And it would include seeing things like auras or the energy field around somebody. It would include seeing a deceased loved one. It would include seeing your spirit guide, for example. So those are all examples of clairvoyance. And basically it is the ability to see into non-physical reality, and to read energy outside of the normal frequency range that the physical eyes can see. So you can see beyond that frequency range using your clairvoyance. Abstract intuition relates to being able to observe and translate symbols and other packages of electromagnetic energy, because basically we are electromagnetic energy, and the electromagnetic energy is arranged in particular configurations, and So we store memories, experiences, beliefs in the form of these distinct packages of electromagnetic energy. And to clairvoyant vision, they might look like a symbol. And the abstract intuition allows you to translate that symbol into a linear logical meaning that you could understand with your human mind and talk about. And so it gives you the capacity to interpret a multi-dimensional symbol. Because our human language, it's very linear and it's very simple, and it allows us to deliver linear concepts. But in the language of spirit, which is multi-dimensional, it's not linear. So a symbol can have great depth of meaning and many layers of meaning. And so your abstract intuition is what enables you to translate that. And it can be a symbol and even mathematical formulae, right? Because there are patterns that underlie our reality. And so through your abstract intuition, then you are able to translate that into meaning. So 6th chakra, clairvoyance, and abstract intuition. Those are the two abilities there. So we talked about the 6th chakra now, Corey. Is there a question that we should read out?
No.
No? Okay, cool. So I just remembered one thing that I'm just going to jump back a little bit to the 5th chakra, because one thing I meant to say, and I didn't because we went to a break, is that the way animals communicate is through telepathic communication. The way plants communicate is through telepathic communication. And so if you're interested in communicating with your pets, then that's the psychic ability that allows you to do that, the telepathic one, right? Because they're not using human language, but they are using those telepathic signals and able to receive them as well. Okie dokie.
Interesting.
Yes. They've done a lot of scientific studies, both on pets and on plants. There's some real interesting research on that, actually. I mean, there's a classic experiment where I think they had plants in 2 different rooms. I think this is right. And then somebody went into the room with a pair of scissors and sort of chopped leaves off some of the plants in the room, and they could hear the plants in the way that they were monitoring the signals they were giving off, like screaming. And then they went into the other room, and the plants that hadn't been exposed to the person with the scissors started screaming. I think they had different people come in and do different things. And so they did it in one room, but then the plants in the other room recognized who was who and what they were about, even though they'd not met them before. So that's pretty cool and pretty interesting.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that too about the plants, and it's interesting.
Yes. So I should talk about the crown chakra now, which is the final one of the 7.
Sounds lovely.
That's the one on the top of your head. And, it's sort of about the gateway to higher consciousness, because it's your connection to to God and the greater cosmic consciousness. The 2 psychic abilities that are channeled through the crown chakra are trance mediumship and claircognizance. Another word for claircognizance, which is clear knowing, is knowingness. So this is simply your ability to know. To be still and know yourself as spirit, or to just know something. And of course, a classic example is driving to work and knowing that you should take a different route, and then realizing afterwards the reason I took a different route was because there was a crash or a traffic jam on the usual route I take. So that's not a premonition, that's a knowing.
Yeah.
And
Adam says, thank you for that. Family asks me what the dogs want all the time. I always know somehow.
Yeah. And then let's also just explain transmediumship, because that one might be missing. Because the word medium, people tend to think a medium is one particular psychic ability in its own right, and it actually isn't. It's many different psychic abilities, and so I'll explain that in a minute. But what transmediumship is it's the ability to channel spirit. It's the ability to bring that high frequency energy that's you all the way down through the body, so that you can be embodied, so that you can express your unique consciousness and your unique vibration through your physical system. And its primary purpose is for you to channel your own energy. So everyone's a transmedium, because everyone is spirit and has got a body and has created the body in order to express themselves through the body. But that ability of transmediumship can be used and misused. Misused when we're talking about something like possession and by an entity, or channeling a higher being, which it brings through high-level information. So both ends of that spectrum. So channeling yourself, channeling God, and channeling other entities, some which may be benevolent and some which may not be benevolent. And what's the difference between that and mediumship? Mediumship, people are often thinking about, that's when you communicate with someone who's passed away. Someone who's being a medium could actually be using any of the psychic abilities that we've talked about in these two shows. So some mediums might see clairvoyantly and communicate by seeing clairvoyantly. Other mediums might hear clairaudiently and communicate that way. Other mediums might know. Some might feel. So there's a vast array. A medium can be using multiple psychic abilities in order to do mediumship. So I don't think of mediumship in the sense of communicating with dead people as a psychic ability in its own right. I think about it as a practice that uses potentially one or many different psychic abilities. All right, well, that brings us
to break number 2.
To break number 2. And you know what? I just thought there is a part 3 of this, by the way, because although we've taken our journey through the 7 chakras now, the next level of it is that there are additional psychic abilities that we haven't spoken about, and those additional psychic abilities are channeled through multiple chakras working together. So there are some that are through the crown and 6th chakra working together, or the 1st and the 6th and 7th working together, and so on. And so that's what we can do the show on next week. So when we come back from the break, let's take more questions about psychic abilities. And I want the listeners who are tuning into the radio show as well to, if you didn't write down the phone number and you'd like to call in, the phone number is 604-504-7441, extension 4142. That's 604-504-7441, extension 4142. And this is Dr. Leslie on Unlocking Your Truth, and we will be back after these messages. Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
That's me.
Yeah, we're talking about psychic abilities, which is a topic that we really, really love to talk about, because this show is about metaphysics and spirituality, and that's my passion. That's what I spend my life doing, is using my psychic abilities and teaching other people to use their psychic abilities. And so we've been doing a little mini-series on the show to talk about everyone's psychic abilities, which I call the Psychic Ability Blueprint. Because every one of you has a unique profile of psychic abilities that are yours, nobody else's, belong to you, map directly to your life purpose and your life challenges, and knowing about them can help you to accelerate your spiritual unfoldment and understand yourself more deeply. And so do go to the website and check out the Psychic Ability Blueprint, the personal psychic ability reading that is on there. Actually is on special at the moment.
Yeah, there's also a quiz, free quiz.
There's a quiz as well, where you can find out which clair is your strongest clair. So if you go on the website and you click the free tab, you'll see a tab that says quiz. And if you haven't taken that quiz yet, do take that quiz, because it asks you a bunch of questions and then looks at whether you are resonating more with being clairvoyant, clear seeing, clairaudient, clear hearing, clairsentient, clear feeling, or claircognizant, clear knowing. And a lot of people find, of course, that it's not just one of them, because none of you just have one of them. You all have many of them. But it may be that one starts to open up more than the others, and how that happens for you it's unique to each person, really. But there is a foundation of what should we call processes and techniques that can help give you a solid platform for opening your psychic abilities and exploring your chakra system in a safe way. And that is what I teach in my Unlock Your Intuition course. And the next Unlock Your Intuition course is starting in September. So I guess that's not too far away now, just over a month away. And we will be we've taken 8 groups of students through it for the last 2 years, and it's very, very successful at helping people to really validate their psychic abilities, really understand what they are, what's the difference between their ego or these other aspects of themselves, and and how to really operate consciously as spirit through the physical body, and how to cleanse and clear the physical body so it becomes a clear vessel for psychic development. Because here's the thing, most humans, by the time they're an adult, have been through all sorts of stuff in their lives, and it's like they've stored this stuff and baggage in their energetic field. But you're looking out at your reality through that energetic field. And so if you haven't spent the time to clear yourself, you are not your temple isn't clear. You're not looking with your psychic abilities in a neutral and clean way. You're looking at it through a veil of distortion. And so it's really important for anyone developing their psychic abilities to also be healing themselves, because then you are a clear temple, and then you are able to see clearly and in a neutral way and deliver information to other people that isn't tainted by biases caused by your own life experiences. So it's very, very important to the journey to open your psychic abilities is also the journey to heal yourself. The two go together, in my opinion. You can't separate the two. And I mean, if you do, it might get you into trouble somewhere along the way.
So, Dr. Leslie, you've done a lot of blueprints now. You've worked with a lot over the past 20 some odd years. You've worked with a lot of people with their psychic abilities, helping them get through. What's the weirdest thing you've seen? You must have something in your catalog of.
Well, it's I see weird things every day.
No, I know that. But what are the most unusual or the sweetest or the nicest? What stands out? If I ask you, what stands out over the past 20 years with regards to psychic abilities and people and their psychic abilities? What?
Well, I mean, I guess what I might say that stands out is at least a weekly occurrence for me is I will see something in somebody's energy field and I'll think, oh boy, and I'm going to say this to this person, and what are they going to think? And it never ceases to amaze me, because they always say it makes absolute sense to them. And so some examples of that are, I don't know, and this has happened with more than one person. They sit in front of me. They want a past life reading. There's no past life timeline, because it's their first incarnation on this planet. But they're not a young soul. They're just someone who has been incarnating in another world or other worlds. And so then you go, oh boy, okay, you're kind of an alien in a human body. And they will say, oh, that makes sense to me now, because I've been walking around feeling like I'm different and I don't belong, and looking for other people like me. And so that's happened a few times. and maybe let's see what else. Just very strange things like people in male bodies that have the idea of incubating a baby within them, and then you go, how can say this? And it makes sense to them. Oh yes, I've been feeling like that. So all sorts of strange things come up in people's energy fields, through the healing process. Or a recent one was somebody who 2 souls were being channeled through the same body. That's another. So it never, and I'm often getting people with, let's see, about a year ago. I mean, this should be another show in its own right. I was taken out of the body and trained in doing some DNA healing work by a couple of ascended masters, and then that's a whole other story. But they've been bringing me people to do DNA activations on, and to activate silent DNA within the genome of specific individuals. And that's kind of interesting and amazing, because every time it's different, and often it's opening up a kind of a galactic level of to their galactic self as well as their physical earthly self. So I don't know. When my book comes out, which is next spring, there's a chapter on every single psychic ability. And there are case studies of my clients over the years. And so for each psychic ability, there's 2 examples. So there's 44 different case studies at least. Actually more than that, probably about 50. And all based on the psychic ability blueprints that I've done. And so it tells people's stories from the perspective of a particular ability or a group of abilities opening up through the challenges they went through, to overcoming the challenges and becoming more of a master level of that. Another really cool example is a lady who one day came to me late for a session and said, "I'm sorry I'm late, but this terrible thing keeps happening to me. I get on the bus and the bus breaks down. Then it sends another bus and I get on that bus and the bus breaks down." And on and on and on and on. And what it was telekinesis, telekinetic activity. She wasn't grounded enough, and all her energy was arcing off and shorting the circuits on the buses. So that's one of the examples in the book. But there are many other examples in the book. And these are just...
Told me that one.
Didn't I? God, there's so many of them.
So I have a comment from Adam. Adam says, recently decided to fully commit to the study of all these spiritual things. I'm pretty open to it, and I'm attempting to sort through the various things. I'm experienced or have experienced... attempting to sort through all the various things I experience or have experienced. Finding out that many things in my life I assumed were normal are actually extrasensory experiences or fit into a description of particular physical ability. He also says, looking forward to reading the book.
Yeah, but books being published by Llewellyn, and so they have it in their little conveyor belt. So it's not being, even though it's written and everything's edited and ready to go, it's not coming out till April. But we'll start having lots of special things to promote the book starting in the fall. Yeah.
And so I get Jennifer says, hi, Leslie, enjoying the modern tinfoil cap.
The modern tinfoil cap?
Just received the silver threaded headscarf. Very good for anyone that is very sensitive.
Are you receiving or or repelling?
Yeah. So Lori says, I just had that happen the other day with the bus where I had a hard time getting home due to the bus breaking down and late buses.
Yes.
Don't anybody take a bus with Lori.
Yes. Well, and that could be different things. It could be the same, and it could be the same, or it could be something else.
So, Dr. Leslie, what was your hardest challenge? What was the biggest challenge that you had in breaking back into your psychic abilities? Like in like saying, okay, this is it. I'm going this direction. What was your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge, and this is in my experience one of the common 7 challenges that most people go through, no matter what psychic ability that they're developing. And that is how to bypass the intellect. Because I had a very powerful intellect. I've got a PhD in science, and I was a scientist, and I was a business development executive in the corporate world. And so very intellectual energy, logical, analytical. So very dominant mind, very dominant intellect. And so for me to go through that process of discerning the difference between my intellect and my higher self, and operating consciously as spirit through the body versus the body's apparatus in the mind, which is, the brain is part of the body. It's not part of you as spirit. And so, that dominant intellect, how to put that in its place. It's the most highest vibration of the body. It's very powerful. Of course, we need it. We use it for all sorts of things. And with most people, it's one of the dominant faculties. But it will cause tremendous doubt. It will cause you to invalidate and doubt your intuition, because it's analytical and it's linear, and the intuition is multidimensional and it's non-linear.
True. And
so it would be that. The other big ones are for people are the emotions. It's another one, because you think of the body as like it's kind of like an animal, isn't it? And it's got these impulses. It's got the sex drive. It's got the emotional aspect, and it's got the intellect. And those things are tremendous barriers for people, because they're used to operating from those levels, and they have to learn to have seniority over those levels to access any and all forms of intuition, basically.
Yeah. I have a comment from Jennifer, and Jennifer says, after Leslie's healing that I have had to clear the muck that attracts Klingons, and learning her teachings, I am now over halfway through her Kundalini course. They are amazing. She guides us softly, and it allows for better grounding, better clarity, and better clarity and sight, and it has allowed me to be clear on my own. She said on her own. My head and my body. Thank you.
Yes.
By the way, these are unsolicited.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
We're near the end of the show, but I'll just make one quick comment on that. The Kundalini courses are advanced courses. To take them, you have to have taken Unlock Your Intuition first. When you open your Kundalini, it accelerates your spiritual development. It accelerates the opening of your psychic abilities. It also accelerates the personal healing. And so you need that safe foundation of techniques from Unlock Your Intuition to set you up for the next level, which is the Kundalini. So you've got to get the body used to it in a gentler way first. In order to do it safely. So because the Kundalini course comes up, I just want to say that, folks, don't just go and buy my Kundalini course.
Yeah. Which some people have done.
Yeah, you want to do the Unlock Your Intuition first. And I like to do these courses. You can take them unsupervised, but it's much better to take them supervised by me as well, because then you get your hand held a little bit. Okay, I have to go. But you know what? We're going to do part 3 next week. We're going to be live in the studio next Tuesday as well, because our interviewee's got the flu, so we'll come in and do part 3 of Psychic Ability Blueprint, and we will talk about a whole bunch of additional psychic abilities which map to more than one chakra. So that'll be
just
fun.
One more quick. Adam says thank you for those insights, and Jennifer says, and many people do not guide gently or give any background. So thank you, folks.
Yeah, that's true. She's correct, and that's
time to go.
Yes, that's what I love to do. So bye, folks. It's been absolute delight this evening, and thank everyone who joined us from the Facebook group, and everyone who joined us live on air, and everyone who's listening later on the podcast. Thank you as well.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com. where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. You can also find the questions that were asked during this show at the website on our free card reading podcast page, where you'll find a full list of them. Come back again